Hello everyone, and welcome to this behind the scenes video showing the creation of my entry into the Ludum Dare 36 combo. I'm actually really happy with how the game turned out. To those of you who don't know, Ludum Dare is the biggest game development competition in the world. The rules are simple: you have 48 hours to create a game using only self-made assets. There's also a jam for those who want to work together with a team, in which you have an extra 24 hours. However, I worked on this game alone, so I submitted it to the combo. The theme was announced 3 hours after midnight. It was ancient technology. I decided to sleep through the night and began working when I woke up. I started by taking an hour off to brainstorm different ideas. I considered making an endless runner through the streets of ancient Egypt, where the game was centered around avoiding different ingenious traps. Upon exploring the idea, I found that the game would quickly become very art heavy and that it was too alike other projects I've done in the past. I really wanted to do something different, so I scrapped that idea, but decided to stick with the Egyptian theme. My new idea: making a spin-off to the old school gold miner game, where instead of digging from the surface, you would be able to move underground using your grappling hook. The miner, who I decided to call Mr. DIGGIN, then stumbles upon what looks like modern technology, proving that the Egyptians were way ahead of their time. At this point I was ready to jump into Unity. I got the grappling mechanic done pretty quickly. Once the hook fired properly, and I was able to keep track of what objects it hit, I made the player move to the location of the hit object. The real challenge here was making the movement feel smooth and responsive. I found that the best way of doing this was using a chain of coroutines that were each responsible for shooting the grappling hook, returning it, or pulling in the player. I also decided to stay completely away from the Unity physics components, only using colliders for hit detection. This gave me complete control over speed and smoothing of the movement. Next up was collecting items. I gave each item a rarity and a weight. The worth of the item was then calculated based on those factors. I finally got a bit tired looking at those temporary sprites, so I hopped into Photoshop and of course forgot to hit record. Anyway, here's the result. By the way, when you aren't allowed to find textures on Google, you find yourself using a lot of fractal noises. Staying on the subject of graphics, I created some particle effects for the items and made a little explosion when collecting them. I also added some image effects, especially the motion blur made moving around the scene feel a lot more exciting. I coupled that with letting the camera move together with the grappling hook. I quickly realized that the levels would have to be fairly large in order for there to be enough content to explore, so I decided to generate the level procedurally by semi-randomly placing items of varying rarity and size around the scene. Because the rarity and amount of items increases linearly with depth, the player is incentivized to dig deeper. I needed some UI to display the amount of money earned, along with a countdown timer that ends the game after 2 minutes. The user is then met with an end screen that displays the score. I later added a locally stored high score as well. I then added a main menu and a pause menu. At this point the core game felt almost complete. However, I didn't have a way to communicate story to the user or display jokes. For this I made a simple Pokemon-inspired dialogue system that other systems could easily plug into using events. I also felt the need to do a bit of optimization, especially because I wanted to make the levels even bigger. So upon generating the map, I created a huge list and populated it with all the items and their respective positions and scale. I then loaded these in when the player got near and destroyed them again when out of range. This greatly reduced the number of objects in the scene at any given time. After having played the game all the way through a couple of times, I discovered that the time limit felt more like a constraint than a challenge. To fix this, I added bonus time to the items so the player could extend the playtime by improving at the game. Time for music. For this I used a great and simple program used by a lot of jammers called Buska Carl? Buska Soy? Anyway, the main theme sounds like this. I then created an audio manager that could easily play sounds with varying volume and pitch. I used Adobe Audition to record a bunch of sounds. I pretty much searched my entire apartment looking for objects to smash together. At this point the game was pretty much ready to be packaged up and submitted, so I quickly threw together an icon for the executable and began exporting to all of the different platforms. The game was submitted just before the deadline, which means very late at night for me. This is how I looked at the end, tired and happy. That was pretty much my experience developing DIGGIN. I hope you will enjoy playing it. There's a link in the description. I would love to livestream the next Ludum Dare. Let me know if that is something you want to see in the comments. Other than that, thanks for watching and I will see you in the next video. Thanks to all of the awesome Patreon supporters who donated in July, and a special thanks to VCNP, Andrew K and LuxGameTV.